Good morning and welcome to Carolina Cares, an iHeartMedia production. My name is Tyler Ryan, your host. We are hailing from our flagship family of stations in Columbia, South Carolina, here on the South Carolina Radio Network. So very happy you joined us for the show, and a very important topic: our pets, our dogs, and our cats. I mean, there's no doubt that we love them. Now, according to the Hspca, there were about 78 million dogs and 70 million cats that are collectively owned here by us, by Americans. Lots of them. Our pets, our puppies, right? Our forever four-legged family friends. The problem is that each year, 6.5 million pets enter animal shelters across the country. Now, keep in mind, we're not talking just about strays, okay? 6.5 million. In fact, upwards of 30% of that number, of that 6.5, are actually dropped off by their owners for one reason or another. Sometimes it's situation changes financially, families change, and so there's oftentimes reason, but that number is still there. That shelters are jam-packed with these unwanted pets. It's still 6.5 million, and here's the thing: roughly 1 million of those dogs and cats who get put in don't make it back out. Okay, they get euthanized. And that's heartbreaking as a pet lover. That is heartbreaking to me. Now, remember, we're also not talking about the humane euthanasia of animals due to sickness or injury. That's a whole different thing. If a dog is, and we've all probably had a dog we've had to put down. I've had to through the years, and it is the most heartbreaking day on the planet. But it's the humane thing to do. But we're talking about on these dogs and cats that are put down. We're talking about absolutely healthy, loving, amazing dogs and cats. In fact, the Hspca says that only about 1 to 2% of the animals that are put to sleep in shelters are sick or injured, or they're doing it because they're not going to recover from their injury or their sickness. So these are vibrant, healthy animals that are just euthanized every single year. Now, less than a decade ago, I want to share this with you as well. The number of euthanized animals just in Richland and Lexington counties was about 19,000. That's a lot. 19,000 animals just here in the Midlands never made it out of shelters, and that's an incredible, staggering number. Obviously, overpopulation is the problem, period. Remember, Bob Barker always said, spay and neuter your animals, and it was for good reason. He was right. If you remember, you watched The Price is Right. Every show, he was on it. He knew it. Now, there is good news. Across the country, the no-kill movement is saving many, many lives. In fact, the No-Kill Columbia program right here in the capital city is leading the charge. Now, it doesn't save all the lives of the unwanted pets. Not all of them, but we're getting there. We're getting there. You know, and you need to spay and neuter your animals, and that's the thing. It's the humane thing to do to keep your animal alive. Spay or neuter your little guy. Now, I realize that with some pet owners, it's not a matter of irresponsibility, saying, you know what, I don't want to get my dog neutered. It's not that. It's economics. The cost of having your pet fixed it can be a lot, and it can oftentimes be outside the family budget, especially if you're not working right now. Now, the good news is that there are organizations that offer services extremely inexpensively, especially when you compare to the regular run-of-the-mill vet. Organizations like the Humane Society of South Carolina, located in Columbia, South Carolina. Leading up to that, joining me from the Humane Society here in Columbia is the Executive Director, Don Wilkinson. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Absolutely. Whenever we talk about, the overpopulation problem, and everybody remembers Bob Barker, so I always use that reference. Growing up, I had no clue what it even meant. I just remember he would say it at the end of every show. But, the overpopulation at the end of the day is the issue with these dogs and cats that are going into shelters, perfectly healthy, perfectly well-behaved, and they're just not having a chance. Would you agree? Yes, that is correct. Many animals enter the shelters just because, they were a product of this overpopulation problem. Right. And, my dear friend Wayne, who was with the Humane Society for many years, and I wish I had written down his math, maybe, and you might know it, but just a couple of cats who are, out in the wild, out in the streets, within a year or 2 years, they can generate an astronomical amount of kittens and cats who are all running around with no home, right? Yes, that is correct. One female cat and can have more than 2,000 unwanted births in 4 years. 4 years. Holy smokes. Good gracious, that number is it's staggering to me that can have that kind of impact very quickly. Now we wonder why there's overpopulation. Well, that would be why. So, and you take them to the pound, and we understand the process, and there's city dog pounds, there's places like the Hspca. There are a lot. I love it used to be Project Pet, the Palmetto Lifeline. There's a lot of fantastic organizations out there that work to try to rehome these animals, to make sure that they don't become the numbers that don't make it back out again. There's so many great organizations, but not nearly enough.
That is correct.
So what do we do about that? I know, obviously the spaying and neutering is the ticket. Now that's all great, but you can't obviously I wouldn't pick up a stray cat in an alley and bring him to the Humane Society and have him spayed. I don't think I'd mess with that cat. So that part of that systemic issue, we can, I think, build a bit of a change, but I don't think we can stop it. But as far as, you've got, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you've got a dog or cat and you want to do the right thing. It's going to make him healthier. It's going to make him happier. But sometimes you can't afford it because vet bills, as you know, if you're a pet owner, they can be pretty high, pretty darn quick.
Yes, and that is why our organization, we have a clinic in Columbia, and then we have mobile surgical vans that go out in the Midlands area, and that is solely to accomplish low-cost spay-neutering for, clients, public.
Sure.
Public.
When you say low cost, give me a ballpark of what that low cost is. And I understand maybe it may be like a range, but what's the basic cost if I've got my little doggy, little Nixon. In fact, I had him done at the Humane Society, as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago.
Okay. So, in our clinic in Columbia, our prices range from a dog spay is $80 and a dog neuter is $60. A cat spay is $50 and a cat neuter is $30. So even just getting your male cat neutered, which could help prevent 2,000 unwanted, births, that is only cost $30.
Right, and again, it's for his own health too. It's going to make him a happier cat. I mean, that's just the way that it works, right? And I've always been told that anyway. That it keeps him healthier.
Yes, it does. It reduces their risk of cancer. Mm-hmm. And the younger you have them spayed, the better off they'll be. Right.
Now, when you compare that to an average vet spay or neutering, which can be several $100s depending on where you go, that's a significant game changer as far as making that decision to have your animal done.
Yes, it is, and there's also some other forms of assistance, even in addition to the low cost. We work closely with another nonprofit in Richland County, the Animal Mission, and they provide vouchers for Richland County residents, which would basically, at our clinic in Columbia, get a free surgery.
Wow! So you can't say no to that. I mean,
that's right.
How do you say no? Yeah, you've got to bring your dog or cat to you or to the mobile clinic or whatever. But how do you say no to that? Especially when you're talking about the overall health of your family member, your furry one, but you're still your family member. So Dawn, tell me about. So I want to kind of clarify what kinds of different types of shelters there are out there. So the Humane Society of South Carolina, located here, isn't necessarily the Humane Society of America, and it's not another Humane Society because they all function different. Some Humane Societies are actually do adopting and things like that and are shelters. You, at least here, the Humane Society of South Carolina isn't a shelter per se. You're a clinic to do the spay and neutering. Is that right?
That is correct. Our Humane Society in particular is a little unique in that it is our mission to end animal cruelty, neglect, and overpopulation. Mm-hmm. And how we do that is through our spay-neuter services and then also in assisting complaints of animal cruelty and neglect. Mm-hmm. So, no, we do not have a shelter adoption environment. We work very closely with the City of Columbia Animal Services, other rescues, and shelters that are out there throughout the Midlands.
Okay. And you obviously work beyond the Midlands as well, to the coastal areas, just with other shelters that are around, I would say, right?
Yes, our vans have traveled as far as almost up to the North Carolina line.
Wow. It's for the right mission, for sure. Speaking with Dawn Wilkinson, she is the executive director of the Hspca, the Humane Society of South Carolina. You can go on to Humane SC, as in South Carolina, humanesc.org, and learn more about the programming and the different shelters. And there's a ton of them. And we talked about the Palmetto Lifeline here. I know down in the Charleston area, there's some great organizations that have full brick and mortar places. But there's also a lot of smaller groups that are just advocates for dogs and cats that aren't necessarily, you don't necessarily go in and go in and shop around and pick one like at a pet store, but they facilitate the fostering of animals too. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Columbia Animal Services has a huge foster program. Mm-hmm. So does Palmetto Lifeline. And there's some other rescue organizations in the area that are totally foster-based. Right. And that these animals have a temporary placement so they don't end up in a shelter environment because, as everyone knows or should know, an animal, it's not the best place for an animal to be in a shelter. A shelter should only be a temporary holding spot for an animal before it goes on to its permanent home. Now,
I have known friends that have intended to foster, and they fall in love with the darn dog so much that they become the permanent parent. And I know that happens. That's why I don't foster, because that's what I'm afraid I would do, Dawn, is I would have to buy a bigger house. Because I just
yes, that commonly does happen.
You just can't say no, and I'm not a huge cat guy. The world knows it. I make no bones about it. But even with cats, there's something special about the way your pets can make you feel. You come home from an absolute rotten day, and that big doofus is waiting at the door for you, so excited to see you. It doesn't matter that your boss just chewed your behind. It just, there's something about having that absolute just nothing, just absolute love. They don't have a mean, but the animals are not mean. They don't do mean things. They love you and they forgive you, which I think is so incredible, owning a pet.
Yes, it is. It is one of the best things that anybody could have. And like you had mentioned before, most households in the United States do have pets. We have more pet owners now than we do have families that have children.
Wow.
So it is a staple,
sure,
of our life is to have a cat or a dog.
Or a few.
A family pet. Or a few. Yes, I have quite a few, so I understand.
I can imagine. One of the other things that historically, I know that the Humane Society of SC, one of the things you guys at one point had was an animal cruelty investigative position. If there was a report of animal cruelty, that was a specific function that you would do. Now, the laws have changed, and so that's kind of changed how you guys approach a report of animal cruelty. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So, the law had changed back in May of 2019, and, we commend the governor for signing that law. Mm-hmm. And however, that law did revamp some things, which made it harder for the Humane Society to really go out and investigate. Mm-hmm. This investigation of animal cruelty and neglect really falls on law enforcement. So we had to try to change our focus in the last year to more aid and assist law enforcement with these investigations,
right,
with training, with guidance, so that they are comfortable in prosecuting and charging people with animal cruelty and neglect.
Prior to the law change, basically the investigators who worked for the Humane Society had that prosecutorial authority to issue a ticket and bring somebody into court for cruelty, or was that always a law enforcement piece working hand in hand?
No, under the law many years ago, we did have prosecutory ability. Mm-hmm. We were allowed to issue tickets, and then that was revoked. That was probably a several year back change, and And what it's done is we are so thankful that the law has advanced.
Sure.
We are still one of the lower states in the United States with the least strict animal, cruelty laws, but we're getting there. And that's very important, and it's a start.
Now, when you say it, you're saying that just not a lot of is a cruelty case now that it's now in law enforcement's hands, but it's still a cruelty case. Is it hard to prosecute? Is it hard to get a conviction for law enforcement or an investigator? Let's put it that way, because the laws just don't have enough teeth in general. And you're saying that it's getting better, which is fantastic, and I commend the legislature and of course the governor for that. But are you saying that's kind of that struggle? It's a little tougher here to maybe make a good charge, make a good case, and really fix the problem?
Yes, it is. It is. There's a lot of factors that go into prosecuting animal cruelty and neglect, and even from proving ownership of, the animal. You'll have people who deny that they own and care for, an animal. And so you have to be able to prove that relationship. And sometimes that can only be proven by the purchasing of food, other things. So it is very, taxing on what needs to be pulled together. We have, however, successfully prosecuted a lot of cases and have been successful with putting those individuals in jail.
First of all, I'm glad. I'm just, I have little room for people who abuse old folks, kids, or animals. A lot of things I can forgive in this world. We all make mistakes, but those three groups, if you're somebody that abuses or cruel to any of those three groups, I have absolutely no use for you. And somebody can hate me for saying it, but I don't care. That's a different kind of individual that can sit and watch a child or a senior or especially an animal, just watch them suffer and not have any sort of compassion. I just don't get it. But you brought up an interesting point, and I never thought about that. Is how do you prove that it's your animal? Because they're not titled to us. It's not like a car, for goodness sake. So you're right. What's to stop me from saying that ain't my cat? That ain't my horse. We've all heard the stories from. You might remember a few years back there was a large. I think it was Orangeburg. It was a large case, a large number of horses. That there was a huge animal cruelty case, and you've got to jump these hurdles. That's not my horse. How do you prove that? And is it just buying food, or is it through like a series of, hey, he did this, he did this, he did this?
Oh yeah, especially in horse cases, where they will move the horses from property to property in order to avoid getting caught. That we see that routinely happen, and there are various ways that obviously the solicitor's office can prove, ownership of the animal, where it's located, who owns that property, who's providing the care for the animal or lack of providing care for the animal. But, law enforcement and the solicitors do have to jump through various hoops in order to go through all that process of getting it prosecuted. Right.
I know some of the larger agencies have a very specific animal control officer or groups that deal with that kind of stuff that probably, I'm sure they're better skilled, but we work we live in a state where most of the police departments and law enforcement agencies aren't the size of Richland County, Greenville County, Charleston County. They're the size of, 2 or 3 guys, if that. And so that's got to be also very hard with a regular caseload for officers to say, I've got these 6 calls for service for my taxpayers, my residents, and I've got these 3 calls on animal cruelty. That's going to put an extra tax on everything as well.
Oh, absolutely. We find that a lot with the, rural counties in South Carolina, where, we will try to assist them, educate them on the facets of the law and what they can actually prosecute under. So we do realize that resources and time are a big hurdle in, really truly prosecuting all animal cruelty and neglect.
And you offer that to law enforcement across the state?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We I know there's coordinated efforts for training around the state that go on periodically, and any, law enforcement agencies can contact us, and we can, put them in touch with where they can find some of these resources.
Speaking with Dawn Wilkinson, the executive director of the Hspca, the Humane Society of South Carolina, located in Columbia, is where you are, but obviously you service not only the Midlands, but clearly service areas in the state. When we opened the show up, we talked about the amount of dogs and cats that go into shelters every year and the sad amount that don't make it back out, north of about 1 million. Now, that number is dropping significantly. It used to be about 1.6, 1.7 million in my research I did for the show today. So obviously, we're going in the right direction, but we're still talking about 1 million pets. But what is the no-kill thing? And I mentioned back about 10 years ago, the number was about 19,000 animals were put down in the Midlands alone. Now, we're not talking just the state of South Carolina. We're talking about 2 communities. So you don't group in Charleston and Horry County and Greenville and Darlington. But I know that the no-kill Columbia movement has been moving along, and that really is working hard to make that number as close to zero as possible. Can you kind of talk about them? Because I know it's a national movement as well.
Yes, it is a national movement, and, animal welfare really focuses on every healthy, adoptable animal finding a home. That is why we have seen a lot of these rescues and transport services develop over this last decade in order to reduce the euthanasia in the shelters. If we keep the shelters empty or at a minimal occupancy rate, then the shelters are able to handle what comes in. Right. And then also turn them around and get them back out, adopted, or transferred in a timely fashion. So it's very important that, we realize that there's resources that have to work with the shelters in order to help facilitate our no-kill initiative.
Right. Right. And, I'm glad to make a point. There's always going to be shelters because there's going to be stray dogs and cats that don't have somebody bring them in to get a spay or neuter. And I think I read South Carolina is not in the top 5 list as far as the amount of cats and dogs that get euthanized. I think California, Texas, Florida. I want to say North Carolina, maybe.
Yes, North Carolina. Yes, we look at those statistics, and of course, obviously, in comparison, Texas and California, the land, the amount of area for those states that they encompass, yes.
Sure. Yeah, there's more land.
And they're
right.
warm weather. You have to realize they're warm weather states. And, I actually come from Chicago, and when we were in Chicago, we had one animal organization for the whole county, and wow. I had thought, I'm going to come to South Carolina. It's going to be one animal organization. And that was completely untrue because, sure. In the South, it's warmer and animals reproduce more often.
Right.
And they live through the cold seasons. Yep. Where in northern states they do not. So
it is harder for them, for sure.
It is. So that's why the southern states tend to have a larger issue.
Tell me,
with, overpopulation.
I know that you've got a couple of events coming up in Richland County. Can you kind of brief us on what's happening Richland County way? I know there's some of the folks joining us from around the state, but I know there's other organizations that are doing similar things. But what have you got going on for the Humane Society here?
So we have, with a coordinated effort with Palmetto Lifeline, we have realized that during our COVID shutdown, not less than normal spay neuters occurred. And because of that, there was an increase in specifically the kitten population coming into the shelters and rescues during the spring and summer months. So we have decided to do a coordinated effort with Palmetto, the Animal Mission, and us, and the Humane Society, our clinic on 405 Green Lawn Drive, will be hosting 2 Feral Fridays this fall. The first Feral Friday will be October 30th, and it is for zip codes in the southeast part of Richland County. It'll be free for residents. They will be allowed to trap up to 3 cats per household.
Mm-hmm.
Bring them to us either the day before, Thursday afternoon, or Friday morning between 7:15 and 8 a.m. Drop off the ferals. We will perform surgery, and they will come pick them up Friday afternoon between 2:30 and 4:30.
Okay.
This is a coordinated effort to try to help reduce the number of kittens that will end up in the shelters next spring. And then our second date is November 20th, and that is the northeast part of the county.
Mm-hmm.
And visit our Facebook page, Humane Society Columbia. We have more information on that. Also, you can email us at info@humanesc.org, and we could put you on the schedule for that day for the Feral Cat Fridays. But this is specifically to help target the kitten population.
Okay. And for real quick, what's a feral cat? Is that a cat in heat? What's a feral cat?
Yeah. So there's 2 types of outside cats. There are strays and ferals. Stray cats are cats that are comfortable and relaxed around a human's presence. They'll come up to you. They'll let you pet them. These cats are tame. They probably at some point had been somebody's pet and were either lost or abandoned, but they had been some sort of socialization, and they're comfortable coming up to humans.
Okay.
A feral cat, on the other hand, has had little to no human interaction its whole life, and they live fully in the wild. They're fearful of humans. They will not come around you, and they're not willing to be handled. So those cats, you actually have to use a humane trap,
mm-hmm.
and you trap them. But these are the cats that have the kittens, and then everyone finds the kittens. They take the kittens, and then they bring the kittens to the shelter.
Okay.
So that is what we are working on to reduce.
That makes sense. Because you always hear feral cats, and you wonder what exactly is that feral? Is that is that one that's sick? It's not. It's just one that doesn't have that necessarily that personalization. It sounds like. That's
correct. There's no human interaction, and
right.
and they have to be trapped. And once they are trapped, you bring them to us. We spay neuter them,
mm-hmm.
give them their vaccines, and then they recover at the client's home for a period of time, for 24 hours, and then they're released back where they were found.
Okay, and even though they're stray, they're still going to be happier and healthier and they're not making more kitties. That's probably the biggest
Absolutely. And what people don't realize is that once a altered cat will protect its colony, will protect the other, and will not allow unaltered cats into the colony. So it helps to keep the population in control.
Interesting. All right.
And, there are benefits to having some, cats out there. It keeps the rodent population down and the snake population down. So
don't mind a cat, for sure.
There are some benefits.
Don Wilkinson from the Humane Society here, located here in Columbia, working in the Midlands, but extending on to other agencies around the state. Don't forget, guys, there is the law enforcement program. If there's any law enforcement agencies around the state listening this morning that wants to get briefed up and get information on running animal cruelty investigations, the Humane Society is here for you guys. That's free of charge as well. And we're going to put some links for you on the Facebook page for Carolina Cares. And don't forget, it's humanesc.org. HumaneSC, as in South Carolina.org, the website, and you can learn more about the overpopulation issue, the spay and neuter clinic, and ways you can get involved with this great organization. And if you're not close to Columbia, find an organization near you. I know there's some great ones down on Folly Road in Charleston County, in Horry County. I know there's so many great organizations out there to protect our cats. There are dogs, our lifeblood, our family members. So thank you very much, Don, for joining us this morning. Put links up again at the Facebook page. Just look for Carolina Cares. You'll find that. That's going to do it for this week anyway in Carolina Cares. My name is Tyler Ryan. Thank you so much for joining us here on the iHeartRadio Network. I will speak with you in 7 days.